Hey guys, Joe Madden here, the Joe Madden Sports Podcast, joined this afternoon by WillieGRamirez. Willie,
Yes.
welcome to the show. On-air personality for ESPN Las Vegas, sports writer. You're doing it all. How's your day started?
Oh man, been up since about 4 o'clock this morning here in Las Vegas. Got started early with some sports betting stuff that I do freelance wise, and had to go to physical therapy. I'm in my about to complete my 8th week since meniscus surgery. I sort of feel like a professional athlete from all the people that I've covered, and they talk about the different knee surgeries that they have, and now I'm going through it. So number one, I understand them a little bit more, and number two, they're never going to be able to sneak any type of sly vernacular by me again because I have been through it and I can ask them direct questions.
Absolutely. Well, good luck with that rehab. I heard it's one heck of a surgery, so hopefully that goes well for you, Willie.
Yeah, it's actually I'm ahead of the curve because I was doing some PT before surgery. So they told me 4 weeks before I could get back in the squat rack. I got back in 23 days. They said six
Wow.
to 8 weeks before getting back to my working weight. I did that in 38 days, and then just this past Saturday, I threw up 275 pounds. So I'm pretty excited for the progress. It's just now it's the getting past being impatient of that the little tense feeling
Yeah.
within the knee and the structure because you just want it to be better.
Absolutely. Well, incredible progress that you're making there. Now, let's jump back. Let's talk about how you started in this industry, Willie.
Oh man, so grew up in Las Vegas, came here in 1972, so I've seen it. You know, when it took about 7 minutes to get from one end of the strip to the other. I moved away for a few years, and when I came back, um, I started working at a mall, the Boulevard Mall, and some really close friends that I met there, who I'm still friends with to this day. Their family, their parents, came here in the '60s and founded the first black radio station, and then started a black newspaper, and they combined forces. One was the Las Vegas Sentinel, one was the Vegas Voice. It eventually became the Las Vegas Sentinel Voice. And I was always into the media. I was always into sports writing. I was always into just, when I was a kid, I had a tape recorder. It was about this big with all the buttons and the little orange button in the middle of the play button. You had to push them together to record. And I would record myself doing play by play while
No way.
muting Howard Cosell, Don Meredith, Frank Gifford. I would mute, or I would just, there was no such thing as mute.
Yeah.
I'd have to walk up to the TV and turn the dial, turn the volume down, and I would record myself doing play by play. I would go to my grandfather's work and I would take copier paper out and I would draw a line down the center, a line across the middle, and I would make my own sports page and I'd go around and sell it for a quarter. So, I mean, when you talk about manifesting something that you really had no idea what you were into, but
Yeah.
you look back and say, wow, I was really into that. So, fast forward to 1987, started hanging out at the Las Vegas Sentinel Voice and just doing odds and ends. Learning about pay stuff, old school typesetting machines, and eventually, after the Browns, both Ed and Betty Brown died, and my close friend Lee took over as the publisher. He asked me if I wanted to just start writing sports and going on sports credentials, and I would cover the Runnin' Rebels. I was covering the Riddick Bowe Holyfield trilogy and sort of the '92 Olympian boxing, De La Hoya,
Wow.
Meldrick Taylor, those guys, Holyfield, when they turned pro. So I started covering a lot of the boxing, and back then it was just UNLV, football and basketball, and got linked up with some boxing writers, and they really kind of showed me the ropes, and became the Nevada correspondent for USA Today, which at that time was the only national voice for high schools, and the only time they got published was really on Mondays after the weekend with the top 10 and how the top football programs would do and basketball teams. And it just sort of grew and grew. I wasn't into college. Um, I I was a hands-on guy. I wanted to just go experience it, and I was too caught up into Las Vegas nightlife because back then there were no hotel nightclubs. It was
Yeah.
still a small, intimate town, and I just, this is my town. This is my city. So I mean, like I said, going across the strip in 7 to 10 minutes and hanging out at the right spots. I combined that with just sort of growing my brand, my own little brand in covering local sports until I latched on with the Review Journal as a stringer, what they call a stringer, and eventually they offered me a job. And my sort of my open door, the story that I tell to journalism students is they asked me what the one thing I remember when I got started was in 1995, Sonny Vaccaro, who had originally come here in the 80s with Nike to join forces with the guys that really started AAU basketball here. He came back with Adidas. He had a falling out with Nike. He came back with Adidas, and he brought a tournament here called the Big Time. And he gave me a quote that he really wanted to put Nike out of business, the Nike AAU brand in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And he said, I got a host of guys that I'm bringing this time around. And so I pitched some stories to USA Today, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal had me out there for a week. That was my beat for 1 week as a stringer for the RJ. And the one story I pitched for USA Today, I was like, hey, coming out of this, Kevin Garnett just got drafted. I'd like to talk to both Adidas and Nike campers, go up, from UNLV up to Durango High School and talk to the top juniors that are going to be seniors and see what their thoughts are about leaving high school and going right to the pros. And they said, that's fine, but you have to lead your story with the guy you come away with and you think is going to be the next big thing. And I led my story with Kobe Bryant after shadowing him. Yeah, I shadowed Kobe Bryant for a week. He was a junior in high school. And so that's one of my favorite stories of all time. So, yeah. Anyway, it just kind of grew into that.
Huh? Yeah, that week that you shadowed him, what was he like in high school?
I kid you not when I say this, he was nothing different than what he was from as a Laker to when he retired. The way he spoke, his mannerisms, his poise, his maturity, he was so far beyond his years. And that's what was so impressive. And I think it was because he traveled so much, his father playing overseas, being an NBAer, but also, growing up, he lived in Italy, told me stories about, where he would be on a basketball court in Italy and the kids would come and push him off the court, force him off the court because they wanted to play soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer was bigger out there.
Absolutely.
And that's how he learned his footwork.
Yeah.
So he played basketball when he'd have the court to himself. And when the kids came around, he got forced out. He played soccer. So, but we just kind of walked around. I still have pictures like from a point and shoot camera where we went to an auxiliary gym and he let me take pictures of him. Like I had to time it. It wasn't even a professional, journalism camera. It was just a small little, and I took pictures of him slamming and there was him coming baseline and his tongue's hanging out and he slam dunking. And he was really cool. He just, he played for Sam Ryan's basketball club out of Philadelphia. And you just knew he had a chip on his shoulder because that was supposed to be the year of the big man. And I tell you, I just recently did a 21-day challenge. My son owns a very popular and private performance facility here in Las Vegas called the Perfect Gym, PERFICT. And he did a 21-day challenge and I joined it. I actually paid. I'm a partner in the company. So I actually paid so I could hold him accountable and he could hold me accountable. And during those 21 days, I was doing 2:30, 3 a.m. workouts because I needed to be in a gym by myself to do these HIIT workouts. And I live pretty far from the gym that we own together. So I need to get him out of the way. And I would listen to Kobe Bryant videos. And a lot of the interviews that I caught up with that I hadn't seen talk about that senior year. So it was pretty incredible to sort of relive that and go, wow, I interviewed him. I have this. I want to run across. I have these little mini cassettes that we used to use as reporters back in the day. I want to find them. And I think I have the one-on-one that I have with Kobe from then.
Oh, you're definitely going to have to find that. Now, you've had some incredible moments in this industry. That's an incredible moment. Anything else that sticks out in your head that was like, I can't believe I got to do that?
Wow. I'd like to touch on this just because it's not to bring the mood down to anybody or anything, but it's something I think that everybody that has a platform like we do, it's important to talk about. But June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I reached a point in time in my career. When my son got his driver's license, I was like, oh, let me venture back into the freelance era. So I made a call because I put my career on hiatus, and I just started doing sports betting analysis, strictly sports betting stuff, and because I could work from anywhere in the world. As you know, we just need a Wi-Fi. And And it's a 362-day-a-year gig because the only days you can't bet on sports are the day before and the days after the Major League All-Star game. So I was writing constantly. So I reached out. I got this gig with AP, and I worked myself into being the main guy. But after years and years of building myself back up, I couldn't latch on with a full time. I wanted to maybe be a beat writer. I knew Vegas could possibly be a pro sports town, but I just wasn't getting any looks, and it was very disheartening. And 2017, the Golden Knights emerge, and then they get to the Stanley Cup. And I made a post on Facebook after they made the Stanley Cup, just before media day, and I had this long post that basically said, "I can't believe I'm about to cover this. 3 years ago, I really battled with, my mental health in that I had a pretty good life insurance policy that was suicide proof. And that I said to myself, you know what? I've done a lot of things in my life from a personal level. I used to DJ in Las Vegas. I was part of a dance group. We went on tour. There was just, a lot of Vegas nightlife, not to get into too much detail, but a lot of women,
I can imagine those stories.
A lot of sports, a lot of writing, a lot of people, the Kobe Bryant story.
Yeah.
If I were to check out, if something were to happen accidentally, I've lived I'd say I've lived, in my opinion, I've lived a life that a lot of people would wish they could have lived. And I always use this phrase. I never had a bottle of pills next to my bedside, and I never had a gun sitting there waiting, but I did have suicidal thoughts that I battled with, because I thought to myself, my son could have a better life if I check out, and he'd have $1 million that quick, plus a couple of other policies.
Yeah.
And I talked to a couple of people, and when I talked about leaving, they said, Willie, don't do anything drastic and leave just yet, because pro sports is coming. And while they were telling me don't leave Las Vegas, in my mind, I was thinking, don't leave this life. And now I look back and I say, since then, I've covered the Stanley Cup Finals in the most incredible year of any franchise in professional sports history, of any sport. The Vegas Golden Knights, off the October 1 shooting and everything they accomplished. The Raiders are in town, and I cover them on a regular basis. I'll be at the final day of OTAs tomorrow. And just that experience, and I think back to as a little kid, recording myself, doing play-by-play, drawing those sports pages, and now actually doing it. Those are big, big moments. I can't necessarily say that, there's one specific thing. One doesn't outweigh another, because my Kobe Bryant story to me is my signature piece, because at the end of that tournament, the big time tournament, is when I got offered my first job at a major newspaper. So to me, that was my signature moment. But I mean, I could sit here and talk about covering, again, the Bo Holyfield trilogy, watching Terry Norris, and basically bring an end to, or start the beginning of the end of Meldrick Taylor's career. I could talk about when the Rodney King riots in LA forced the Trailblazers and Lakers to play a playoff game here in Las Vegas. I could talk about the Golden Knights. I could talk about the Raiders. I could talk about the Las Vegas Aces and what it's been like to cover them. So there's a multitude of things, but I think the emergence of pro sports in my hometown, knowing that I've been here longer than any other media person in Las Vegas, as from a little boy to where I'm at now, that means something to me. And the fact that I can talk about it so casually, it kind of blows people away, because they see me as this. I'm a very, we follow each other on Twitter. You see sometimes I post a lot of mental health stuff. I post a lot of positive messages. First thing in the morning, if I'm feeling it, I will post just some positive and uplifting and inspirational. I put them on my Instagram stories. And I feel as if it's important to sort of let people know, but at the same time that you're inspiring people, is let them know also your weak points, because if there are people, especially I speak to young kids once a year in a sports leadership class under one specific teacher in town, and I let them, if I'm somebody that you're following, wow, look at this sports reporter who gets to cover and see all these things, but he has low moments like I do, and he can push through the way he does and inspire others, then it may save one life. And so it's important to me. So in terms of like covering sports or whatever. It's more so just getting through every single day, getting up and getting to, like for instance, I'm going to be on ESPN later for the show that I do, but I've never been on your show today. I've been looking forward to this all day because all I see is you tweeting about your show. All I see how hard you work, how hard you promote yourself. I know how hard I try to promote myself. To see you promoting yourself and then to take the time to invite me on. This is a big deal to me because I've never been on the show before.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Willie. And I love the fact that you brought up mental health. I think it's one of those areas that we all have to talk about all the time. And especially for someone like you, that is so well regarded in the industry, to sit here and say, I have had struggles and this is what it's been. You're right. If it helps one person out there, then you've made the world a better place. So thank you for being that person within what you're doing.
I appreciate it. I tell you a quick story just for people out there. When you hear the phrase check on your people, a long time ago when my son was still in high school, there was a kid who had taken his life. And so it reverberated. And I noticed a young girl tweeting some alarming stuff one night. And I direct messaged her. I was like, hey, are you okay? I just noticed you're tweeting something. She was like, I'm really not. And so we had this conversation for about an hour on Twitter. Whatever, went by. That was fine. She was like, thank you, so on and so forth. So a year, whatever month that was, 1 year later, and then at the day of Christmas, okay, I got a voicemail on my cell phone. And it was the girl. And she was emotional on the phone. And she was calling to thank me, to tell me that she saved those messages and read them often. And if it wasn't for me reaching out that night, just paying attention and just saying, hey, are you okay? And opening the door for communication, she was going to take her life because she had felt somewhat of the responsibility of that young man taking his life. And she said, if it wasn't for that moment, she was contemplating suicide. And so that's why it's so important to check on not just the people that are hurting, but check on your strongest people, because sometimes your strongest people are putting up the strongest front to hide some sort of weakness. And June is Men's Mental Health Awareness. So men, do not be afraid to talk about it and just be open about it. Because like I said, the easiest way for me to overcome my suicidal thoughts, my mental health issues at times, which I actually call cerebral health, because mental health is how you deal with it. When you can't control your depression, when you can't control just when it hits you, and for those of you that struggle, you know what I'm talking about. It just happens and you don't know where it comes from. That's cerebral. It starts in the brain. So you can't control that. Your mental health, you can control. It's a matter of how you deal with it and accept that you're going to go through it, but just know that you're going to get through it. So I implore all of you men specifically, this month is our month to kind of just feel free to say, hey, I got issues, I can deal with it, but I'm going to get through it.
Absolutely. What message would you give out to not the people who are struggling, but hear that a friend is struggling? What is the best thing that they can do for that person?
Number one thing I tell people is, when somebody comes to you or when you know someone is, don't say, wow, you shouldn't feel like that. You got so much going on. The last thing that somebody that is going through something wants to hear, yeah, no kidding that I shouldn't be going through it. Like when someone tells me, Willie, you shouldn't be depressed. Look what you got going on. Oh, great. I'll just snap out of it. That's not how it works. Yeah. Don't pacify someone by telling them you shouldn't feel this way, because now you're making them feel even worse, because now they're dealing with what they're dealing with, and you're telling them that they shouldn't feel that way. Like there's something wrong with feeling the way that they're feeling, which is why I have on my arm tattooed, it's okay to not be okay. Let that person know that it's okay the way that they're feeling and that they're going to get through it. Now let's talk it out. Encourage them to just talk. If you tell someone they shouldn't feel that way, and just come on, be strong, they're going to bury it and bottle it up inside, and they're not going to talk about it. And then they're going to feel guilty, or they're going to feel ashamed, and they're not going to turn to you. And and the next time it comes around, they're going to be fearful of talking about it. That's why it's important to encourage people to talk about it, but let them know that it's okay the way that you're feeling. What's not okay is when the other person says, oh, you shouldn't feel like that. You got so much going for you.
Yeah.
That's not what they want to hear.
Yeah, it is okay to not be okay, Willie. Thank you for getting that message out there. Now, I know you have a show coming up shortly here. You want to tell us what's happening on ESPN Las Vegas this week?
You know what? It is a big week in Las Vegas. LVSportsNetwork.com. If you happen to be in Las Vegas, 100.9 FM. It is the Southern Nevada Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony this Friday. We are going to be live. Steve Cofield and I are going to be live Friday at the Dollar Loan Center, broadcasting, talking to past members and presenters. But every day this week, Steve will have on, the show is called Cofield and Company. I'm one of the company. So I'll be on twice this week. Every day this week, we will have on, we're hoping to have on, a past inductee. Today, the guest will be Frank Hawkins, who went to Western High School, went to UNR up in Reno, and then played for the Oakland Raiders. And now he's back in Las Vegas as a businessman. He was a politician. Now he's a successful businessman in town and is still a member of this community. So we're going to be talking to him. And then throughout the week, I am hoping for a really special guest. I'm not going to give any names out, but let's just say that this guy may have 4 Cy Youngs. That might give it away. But hopefully on Friday, we'll have him on the air. So it's sort of a big week because it commemorates some of the biggest names that have really done stuff in Las Vegas. And it's not just pro sports or UNLV. One of the gentlemen that's going in this week or Friday is Larry Brown. Larry Brown went to Harvard. He was a football and baseball player. He came to Las Vegas, and he was on the very first ever Las Vegas Stars baseball team, which was the AAA organization to the Padres back then. But he became a politician, 24-year career politician, city councilman, Clark County commissioner, and he did everything he could for open spaces. His number one agenda since becoming a city councilman was open spaces, parks, and he built Little League fields and softball fields. So just as big as he was in the pro ranks, he was big in really starting the Little League fields that a lot of today's Major League Baseball players that are from Las Vegas played on and had a big role in that. So big week for that. Plus, we're going to have on plenty of the guests that we always do, talking NBA finals, talking Stanley Cup final. Of course, I'll be giving my picks out. I know you got plenty of picks, right?
Yep.
Your big puck podcast. I don't know who you like, but I know who I like in the series. And
can we both agree on Colorado?
No, sorry, can't do it.
That's my heart wants to go with. I don't know if after game 1, if that's where I'll be at.
You know what? Here's the thing with that. I've been covering this long enough now. I've been a fan of hockey since I short time lived in Minneapolis when the old North Stars were there. But here's the thing. Both teams are very fast. I know Colorado's been rested. I know what they have. But this time of year, it comes down to something like this. It comes down to who has the better goaltender. And the way that Andre Vasilevsky shut down the Rangers in the last 4 games with a goals against average of less than 2, save percentage around .955 in those last 4 games. And really since Toronto took a 3-2 lead in the opening round, he's 10-2, and he's been outstanding. And the one thing that they've done a good job on is clogging the neutral zone and avoiding the 4-line rushes that come out, the teams that can roll 4 lines, which is the way Gerard Gallant coaches. It's the way he coached against Tampa Bay when he was in Vegas. It's the way he coached the Rangers in the regular season against Tampa. John Cooper just outcoached them, and they slow teams down. They don't allow them to get on a rush, and I think that's what Tampa Bay is going to be able to do. Vasilevsky has the edge over whoever the Avalanche end up putting in net, and I just think that they have the edge there. So I like Tampa Bay, especially with the value. 2-time defending Stanley Cup champs at like plus 155. I like the Lightning.
Yeah, I hear you on that. That's one thing I've said for the Avs, Kemper and Francouz. They just don't compare, even though they're good goalies, to Vasilevsky. Yeah. So that is the biggest weakness for the Colorado Avalanche for sure. Well, Willie, thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. I wish you all the best in everything that you have going on.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to maybe getting invited back down the road sometime.
You are always welcome, Willie. We'll talk about anything you want to, anytime you want to. It's an absolute honor to have you on here. Can you let everyone know where to follow you on socials?
Yeah, right there. If you're watching, right. Where's it at? There.
There you go.
Both on Twitter and Instagram, WillieGRamirez. We're going to be starting a new series on my website, WillieGRamirez.com, where we're going to be talking about some local athletes. And then I'll have some coverage of the Raiders. And in another month, training camp opens. But if you follow along on Twitter and Instagram, You can keep tabs on all the stories that we'll be working on with my writing team, because we got the NBA Summer League coming up too.
Absolutely. I love it, Willie. You guys make sure you go give a Willie a follow. Best of luck on your show later today. And thank you again for joining me here today.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.